Good morning, we're
We made
live. Yes, we made it. There were internet issues, so it took us a couple extra minutes to sign in. So welcome to Easier Habits. I'm Alec.
And I am Meg.
So today we're going to be talking about which content to focus on, i.e. who to focus on sending the content to, and what kind of content, and how we're structuring the content itself. So we've talked a lot about like buckets for outreach, but
Yeah.
we'll dive a little bit deeper today. But first, a communication tip.
Communication tip for the day. Be concise.
Nice. It's a good one. Let's leave it at that.
I would, generally, except that, you know me, I can never, just leave it at that. The biggest thing is know when to stop, know when you're rambling, or start noticing when you're rambling, because there is always kind of that point where you've passed the, productivity level or whatever of the engagement. And so generally listening is better. Say enough to convey your idea, but no more than that.
It's probably better to let people ask you for more information than give them too much.
Yes.
So, and to tie into and transition to our talk about copywriting and content, I think we've mentioned this before, but the optimal amount of verbiage for a paragraph in an email or social media post is like 1 to 2 sentences, and not run-on sentences, like normal short sentences. So
that's so hard for the academic in me.
Yep.
That I was raised and like pounded into my brain the 5-sentence paragraph, and even like in, American business emails, it's a couple of sentences per paragraph, maybe. It's even less in Japanese ones. You'll have like a line and then a space and then a line and then a space. Like they're very, very short in most of the business emails that I have. And so, it's hard.
Yep. And actually, before we dive into talking about content, let's see if I can find what that was. I'm going to look this person up, but I got one, and let's see. Yup.
Yeah.
Every single paragraph is its own sentence, which almost, like, I think I see 1 2-sentence paragraph, and that's it. So
I will say, though, that this right here that we're looking at is almost kind of like a blog post email kind of a thing. It's one of those things that, people will send out to their mailing list to give them just, a little bit of insight into something, potentially get a few warm leads, something like that. But it's not a specific email attempting to accomplish something on a project or whatever.
Well, yeah, I guess. On the other hand, like my long emails, nobody ever read.
I know.
And when I was doing business, I always did like a 1 to 2 sentence TLDR at the top of my emails.
Yeah.
And that's probably all anybody ever read. And like I always like I'd want to go into details. I'd want to write like I really want you to understand all of this, but most people just want the takeaways.
And that's so hard as the one who wants to like tell people things. But it's true. It's very true. And if you don't need to waste the time writing it all, then don't.
Right. So let me give you this example. I'm going to read this out, this email that I got that I liked. I found it helpful. The only 2 types of content that matter is the subject line. Bam. Kind of listicle plus mystery. What are the 2 types that matter? Right. First line, a part of online business that I believe is a lot simpler than most make it. There's even a typo, actually. It's that most make it, then most make it, right? I didn't even notice that the first time. People can't be fully bothered to even pay full attention to 1 sentence.
I notice those things, but I'm also in language acquisition.
A part of online business that I believe is a lot simpler than most make it, creating content. And creating content is its own line, right? And that's coming from 9 years of creating it, new line. In parentheses, one of my favorite jokes, bear with me, is that in internet business years, I'm a grandma. I could have done without that. But I guess it makes you seem more approachable.
The personality, come
right,
on.
A personality or whatnot. Now, it took me way too long to figure this out, but the whole idea of content creation can basically be boiled down like this, new line, right? So that's not even a complete sentence, but is compound. There's your content that drives leads. This is bold, new line. Then also bold, there's your content that makes sales. So this jumps out. One, like if you're scanning it, this, like these two sentences jump out. New line, to clarify, a lot of content actually does a little of both, but most will drive one result much more than the other. New line, and these two types are very, in caps, different. New line, bold. So what I recommend for your business to survive is this. Interesting, that was bolded, like that kind of teaser was bolded, but so you can scan and kind of see it as a section, but actually the tip itself, you actually have to read the non-bolded text for. Start focusing on content that makes sense, period, parentheses, like social media and emails, end parentheses, new line. So that was actually two extremely short sentences that, like, especially because they had parentheses.
Well, and one of them is a sentence fragment. It's not a real sentence.
Right, exactly. So
it could be one sentence if it were punctuated correctly.
Right, exactly. So it's very informal. But yeah, very low content. Then, as you grow old, add on, as you grow, not grow old. That's my mind on autocomplete. Then as you grow, add on content that drives leads, period. Again, parentheses like blog posts, for example, which are much more resource intensive. Just a few the many reasons why this is much smarter for your business, and then bullet points, it's easier for you to learn. I'm paraphrasing here. Focuses on making sales and bringing money in first, naturally guarantees you don't waste any work. While each piece of content is helping you make more sales, it's also naturally building more and more trust, authority, and proof in your business that future potential clients will see. So that's just an example, since we're getting on the idea of like content and how to do it and how to be concise. I actually read most of the email, or at least half of the email right there. And even with commentary, it's pretty quick. Yeah. So,
well, and if you were scanning this, the way that it's laid out would be super easy to go way more quickly even. So.
Yeah, if you're scanning, you're seeing the business, you can kind of skip a few sections and you're like, all right, jump to bulleted lists, etc. So that is an example of, copy and content. And it's a good example of the first bucket that she says, content that makes sales, right? So she has an email list. This gives you like the quick win that she's giving you here is like, all right, you can dramatically cut down long form content, videos, blogs, etc. Maybe, and it's not saying don't do that. I think she says later that she focused 90% of her time on the first and then like 10% of her content time on the other thing. So it's good to have a few like touchstone things that you can share with people, especially if you find that you end up saying it a lot. What you can do is saying like, hey, I would love to share this video on how to make connections, how to network at conventions or something with you. Would you be interested, right? And then all of a sudden, instead of having to share that tip personally, you can, and you make a personal contact, but then you kind of leverage the content you've already made. So that's kind of a way the two can work together. But basically, I think what she's not saying in this, but like the principle here is that if you are, if you're starting out, you may not have all the authority, capital, you might not have the content library yet, but what you're substituting for value is personal connection. And so that's why outreach is so important, because that personal connection can make up for the gap you have in other areas, not being an established player yet, etc. So
definitely.
All right, with that, I wanted to dive into like the outreach and specifically focus on some of the most critical buckets that we've talked about. So we kind of talked about how a lot of your, like half of your buckets were like replying to family or not.
Well, not necessarily just family. That was like one
acquaintances.
Bucket. Yes. So as far as like critical ones, and that's why I say like I triage them. I don't even look at those ones while I'm working. I save those ones, reserve those ones for later. But there is still that kind of mental load and time that it takes for me to scan through that and actively ignore those. So that does take up a little bit of my kind of mental whatever.
Right. And I wasn't saying you've spent most of your time on them, but like half, like 3 of your 5 or 6 buckets were acquaintances, versus like the other two that were like acquaintances but not necessarily a business connection, which again, don't necessarily neglect them, but like versus long-term business relationships with no immediate projects or prospect or lead or whatever, and the ones with leads.
Yep.
So or who you're contacting with the idea of, you know, turning them into a lead or whatever, making a sale, etc. So
should make a spreadsheet.
Yeah, make a spreadsheet of all of them, right? And so one is just like as much as you can, and it's kind of hard with Facebook personal messages. I think that's like the one area where they're going to mix a lot, but as much as you can, separate out the family stuff so you don't even have to think about that. And then like long-term stuff, it's good to have like a weekly rotation of like, you know, and cadence of reaching out to those people. But like where you want to be spending most of your day with, right, is the people for whom you can get them a quick win and they might become a client as a result of it, etc. Like that's the idea. So how has that quadrant of your outreach been going?
I think there's still that part of me that kind of shies away from that deeper engagement, right? So the, you know, talking with people, reaching out, finding out how they're doing and whatever, you know, that's fine. But then when it comes to like, I can do this for you, there's still that kind of resistance of like, doing that thing.
So what does your current outreach look like?
It's mostly private messages.
And what are you saying in the private message?
It depends on the person. There's a couple of conversations that I've got going on with people that I've asked them kind of what they're looking for right now as far as business communication. So a lot of it is kind of like dual market research as well as other stuff. And occasionally someone will ask me a question, which I'll respond to. And, you know, it's usually pretty easy. And then there's the groups that I post in where I've been able to find a couple of really good ones where people are talking about relevant things. And so I can kind of comment on, you know, somebody else's post with my personal experience. And then a couple of times I've been able to find within a long, you know, comment thread or whatever, like multiple people to specifically respond to because they're all, you know, kind of in that same space. So I try to like knock out a few that way. Nice. You know, so again, like offering value and connecting with people, but not in a way that is deepening that relationship.
Well, and so give me examples, something to work with. What kind of responses or...
Okay, one I was doing yesterday on LinkedIn, was somebody talking about intercultural communication, specifically between Japanese and American people, and I commented on her post, you know, like, yes, I see a lot of these same things of kind of like Japanese hesitancy, in the face of American, like, aggression, here are some way, you know, here's a couple of things that I've seen that have helped with that. And then she, you know, liked and responded and is like, oh yeah, those are great points.
All right. So immediately, like right there for that example, the next step is, hey, glad you like it. If you try it out, let me know how it goes. Right? That's a very simple, natural invitation to keep in contact.
Okay.
And that, you know, especially when they come back to you, they came back to you with a win from something you tried, right? And you should have like an idea of like, all right, if they come back to you, like, how did that go? And maybe an idea of like, what's the next step, right? You tried that thing, but like, what other issues? Like, you know, you might ask, well, you know, how about this other thing? Is that going well for you or not, right? And again, the asking them, kind of like you said, the market research, what are you looking for in business? English is great, but even better, like, you know, what are you having a hard time with because of, you know, your discomfort with English? Or what are you not doing because of your discomfort with English? Would also be really good questions because it's less academic and more practical with their immediate help.
That makes sense. Well, and especially since that's a lot of what I focus on anyways, is building up just that capability of
you do
using it.
Coaching rather than language teaching, which is different. So you're moving them towards a goal. So yeah, that tweak, the try it out, especially with the adding value. Like, try it out. I would love to hear how it goes.
Yeah.
And even if you have like a spreadsheet of what you've done, or you like look through your recent history, this is another way if you need to get a few free contacts, like wait a week, reach out and just say, just curious, have you been able to use that?
I like that.
And then if not, like, oh yeah, like how often is this an issue for you? What do you come up with more, right? Again, just like asking the questions focused on their problems rather than telling about yourself is fine.
Yeah.
But like you want to like push it in terms of
getting them to respond to me in a way that will deepen their engagement without me having to be like, hey, yeah, so. Yeah.
And like if they ghost you or something like that, you can leave it. You can check back in once or something like that because people get busy. But like there's this one person who someone handed, like I was talking with someone and then they like let me refer to my colleague, and then like I didn't get the first few email or whatever, but and then I got a flood of emails and I'm like, I just don't want to talk to this guy because now I have 10 emails that I feel like I have to catch up on. Right? Like there's way too much follow up. Like every day or couple of days it was like a ping, like email, text, like I'm just like, no, you're too much. I'm on the border of blocking you. But like on the other hand, a lot of people don't follow up at all, which is
finding that happy medium between, you don't want to be too aggressive, but you want to be consistent and there and be that presence, right? Be a reliable presence. Yeah,
even just, a few, every few days, once a week or something like that is probably plenty. Or I feel like my cadence is like once a week. And if someone doing it multiple times a week, I'm like, no, it feels like spam. Yeah.
Well, and especially, if they haven't responded. I don't think I would do more than one a week if someone hasn't responded. Unless I had like some new offering or something like, hey, made this thing, thought you might enjoy it.
If they expressed interest, I'd do it a couple times. Yeah. But like, if it's a comment thread, I would like check back in once. Yeah. And, something like that. Because they haven't specifically expressed interest in an ongoing dialogue with you.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's amazing the power of even those occasional check-ins. I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, because that's how we ended up, like, dating. Yeah. Right? Because, so we knew each other for a good 4 years before we actually started dating. And one of the things that you did just as a friend was call every, 3 to 6 months. It wasn't even a big thing, right? But it was enough to preserve that relationship and to kind of remind me that you existed and that, oh yeah, he's cool. I like him. He's neat. And so then when you did call with more of an intention of like starting the romantic relationship, my brain was already primed with the idea that you were somebody who sticks around, that you're not just kind of one of those like come and go as you please or whatever, but that you actually were dedicated to those relationships in your life, which I thought was really awesome and kind of rare. So
Yay! So I mean, again, a little bit of follow-up goes a long way, especially when in this oversaturated market, a lot of people have a lot of one-off relationships. So somebody who actually follows up, and not like a spam artist. Yes. But like follows up as a person, asking you about your specific needs rather than like reiterating their own offer over and over again. Yeah. That is different. So I think when you can come back to someone and then to ask them about something they were doing or tried or said, that's pretty powerful. So I think that there's one other another type of content, right? So it sounds like providing tips. Another good type of content that I've heard people had great success with is when you go counter common narrative. Like, this is what everybody else is doing, and this is how everyone else thinks you should do it, and they're wrong. Let me tell you a better way. Yeah. That tends to get people's interest, and certainly gets a lot of conversation, too. Even if people disagree with you, the idea that they're actually engaging with your thoughts. Yeah. Like, there's going to be some of the people who do agree with you who will notice that conversation because, people are more involved, right? And so, my question to you is, what could you share that's, controversial or unexpected?
Learn vocabulary slowly. Don't memorize lots of words. In fact, do it as slowly as you possibly can.
All right. Have you tried that one?
As
content?
No, I have not.
All right, that's great. Like, go in the business, a group where people are focused on business English and just say, this is the thing, almost everyone gets wrong. Learning lots of vocabulary.
Yep. And throwing so much into their brains all at once that none of it sticks at all.
Yeah.
Because our brains aren't made to function that way. Because there's no way that we can use all of those
And
words.
that's an entirely different piece of content.
I know, and that's the problem. So
right?
this idea comes from an entire vocabulary boot camp that I created a few years ago. That's like a 3-week intensive course in how to study English vocabulary and the best resources for it and all that kind of stuff.
So what's the quick win that you would give someone with that? Because that's kind of a don't do this, but what's the quick win?
The quick win. I could show them how to learn a word and never forget it.
Yeah. Here's how to learn a word and never forget it. That's great.
Yeah.
There's that direction. There's how to speak even if you don't know the perfect word.
Yes.
There's what else? Or the unit of communication you need to be focused on is not the word, it's the story.
Yes.
Or something, right? Here's a quick story template.
Yeah.
That will dramatically improve your communication in Japanese or English.
Yeah.
And so
5 phrasal verbs that'll get you through the day.
What's a phrasal verb?
They're the most common type of verb in English, but they're basically the ones that use 2 lame words when you could use one nice, beautiful academic word, but we don't do that. Like get up, get down, as opposed to rise.
Oh, Romanian does that all the time.
Yeah. It's one of the hardest things for non-native speakers to do because you can have get up, get over, get by, get along, get down, get off, get in, get out.
Yeah, in Romanian, and this is Romanian doesn't always have the fancy extra words. They don't have the weird mismatch of vocab that the English does, but they'd have give with the head, give with the shoulders instead of shrug, or give from or whatever from the shoulders or something like that. I forget what kick is, but it's do something with the foot. It's very simple in that respect.
Well, and again, that's how so much of English is, but those aren't the words that show up in a dictionary when people are learning English.
Right.
They see words like,
defenestrate.
Not defenestrate. Right? Or descend instead of go down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I never say
That's a good example.
descend in my regular conversation. Let's descend the stairs.
Anyway, I mean, some people might be interested in that because they're just what the heck is a phrasal verb? But focus on the ones what's gonna get through the day. And one of the things that struck out at me as we're thinking about advertising and content was find somebody, find some case studies, and they don't have to even be your clients, of Japanese people who broke out big in in the US or whatever and doubled their company. And you could just share that with people, and your ad could be something like, U.S. business coach, wants to share with you the secret that so-and-so used to double their business or something, right? That's a little long.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was thinking as we were talking about advertising, this is something that came up for us, and Jeremy from Innovative Marketing was talking to us about how he's not seeing a lot of ads in our space, which either means it's gonna work fantastically because no one's doing it and we can capture that, right?
Yeah.
There is a market to capture there, or no one makes their money on that, right? And it's a toss up with Japanese people.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Japanese
people do tend to work through their personal networks. Right? And so it could be either people have tried it and it just doesn't work because Japanese people don't trust you enough.
Yeah.
But it could also just as easily be that Japanese people tend to not use it because they work through their personal relationships. They're not comfortable, they don't trust in it. Whereas there might be some people that you're not going to get a lead from that, right? They're not going to buy with you because they don't have that trust yet, but they might click through to a helpful video, have a win, and that is the start of a relationship. Now you are someone they do know, and then like that can be strengthened. But to the extent, right, that it might be the latter case, the question is, what are you going to give them that they're not going to get from their personal networks? And that's why, like, U.S. business coach might, or something like that, really might shine if you are, like, especially if you're advertising to a Japanese market in Japanese. Because what they're not going to get in their circle, their tight-knit circle of Japanese friends, is the perspective of a U.S. business coach. Like, U.S. business coach says this is how to break into the U.S. market, or or U.S. business coach breaks down how Japanese entrepreneurs break into the U.S. market. Right. Things like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna get that from my friends. And so like that type of content, and this is going back to I always forget how to pronounce his name, Sabri Sabai, but who works on selling. He did an interesting example of breaking down someone's website, like coffee website, and how he would think through a funnel. And the ad, this was like advertising, they said that person was selling way too much. It's just like, all right, focus just on your top selling stuff. Interesting. You have different types of coffee, forget about it, like just your top selling stuff. And it was like South American or whatnot. So he was saying the ad, he had some like value proposition, kind of like mysterious, this crazy South American blend that, gives whatever benefit. And, and that was his ad, right?
It wakes you up.
Right? And then the click through on that, was a story about, and he was making this stuff up, but it's the kind of stuff, hopefully true stuff that you want to put in there, how, like South American warriors used it to like have tons of energy or whatever, or whatever it is, right? And so, and the story, like the landing page was not a sales pitch. The landing page, or until like the very end, was a compelling story. And so like if you had U.S. business coach breaks down how Japanese entrepreneurs break into the U.S. markets, right? If you had that headline, again, it's like, all right, is that even too long? Can you squash it? But like, if you had that, right, they click through, and then like, what they're getting right away is the case study of a Japanese entrepreneur who broke into the U.S. market and what they did, right? What kinds of communications, what kind of like connections they made, and like you can add value by, not just like finding an article where they say like this is my secret to success, but like if you can reverse engineer like some of who some of their first partners were, etc., like that, right? And then at the end is the call to action, like, here, if you like, if what they did it is reach out to like distributors, here, let me help you find distributors, write your cover letter, write your follow-ups, etc. Like, I have this package just for you, Japanese entrepreneur breaking into the US market with distributors or something like that, right?
That makes sense.
And so like that is kind of the chain, right? So you're not selling them on your services in the ad, or even most of that first landing page. You're just offering them this insight they couldn't have gotten from their own networks. Unless like they were friends with that person who was successful.
Okay.
So
awesome. Thank you.
So that's kind of getting into the ads. We'll have also a talk with Jeremy about ads and whatnot later today. So for the business tip today and focus, so I've talked a lot about creating focus in your environment, having dedicated space and time, cleaning it up and reducing some of the clutter and the things that prime your mind to do activities other than work, and then specific hacks for how to do that, how to bring specific sensory experiences like, music, sound, etc., even clothing, right, to help you focus and get in a default work state. But one of the things that's really important is the design of the task itself. A lot of the reasons why we avoid a task, why we procrastinate or have a hard time focusing on it, is it is too easy or too hard.
Yep.
And I've mentioned before how engineers tackle a difficult problem, because normally we're dealing with a lot of different pieces of technology, is just remove pieces of technology from the problem and then like recreate that same problem with fewer and fewer pieces of technology until we find like the two that are clashing, or the one that's clashing, or the one where it is, right? We reduce the scope of the problem. So that's if something is too hard, breaking it down. What can you pull out? What can you isolate? And so, like, right, if content is overwhelming, like we've just talked about, can I focus on one type of content, getting really good at that, or focus on one group, or focus on, etc.
That makes sense, yeah.
If you're at a place where it's overwhelming, like if you're at a place where you're just churning through, like you can do it, and it's, a good level of challenge, just keep going. And then when you get to the point where something is boring and easy, one, like if it's boring, easy, but doesn't get you results, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's that, like sometimes we just default to doing easy things because we want to do something easy. And so we avoid doing things that get us results. But like take the things that will actually get you results. And if it's like an easy, like I know how to do this, I have written this message 100 times or whatever, but I still just need to do it 100 more because I know if I do it 100 times, I'll get 10 leads in one sale or something like that.
Finding ways to automate, right? Or outsource.
So yeah, there's automate if it's really that easy. The other thing is add challenge, right? Add something new into the mix. Find out how an expert does this and copy them, right? So you're folding a new skill that you're practicing into something that is otherwise repetitive. And that is a great way to make the task more challenging and interesting versus that. So for example, for people, this is an example from clients, people trying to get used to publishing regularly, writing something regularly, right? You could have just a goal for a tweet a day, but that's also like, maybe that's a little too easy, right?
Yeah.
Like you still want to build that habit of publishing something at a certain time every day is fantastic. But like, how can you make that more interesting? Well, find the people you like tweeting and, find a type of tweet they do or a subject they tweet about and copy that or use that subject.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've got like a project that's a little bit more interesting than just writing a sentence, which, if is not necessarily bad if you're just trying to form the habit, right? But like maybe that was last week that you formed the habit, right? And you want to keep it up, right? But you want to add some, some challenge to make it interesting, etc. Like, take pieces out if it's too complicated. Add pieces in if it is not, or if it is too easy, and don't select your tasks on the basis of easy or hard. Select them on the basis of impact, and then design the task down or up depending on the desired complexity.
Yep.
And that will help you focus, be invested, etc.
Yay.
So, yep. And until next week, make big changes, one small habit at a time.
Bye.
Bye.